It is the spring of 1241, and Europe does not know it yet, but it is already losing a war it didn't know it was fighting. For weeks, terrified riders have been arriving at the gates of Vienna, of Krakow, of Buda, half-starved, wild-eyed, telling stories that sound less like military reports and more like nightmares. They speak of a people from beyond the edge of the known world. Tens of thousands of them, riding horses that never seem to tire, loosing arrows that never seem to miss, moving across entire kingdoms faster than royal messengers can carry a warning. Within a matter of weeks, this force will annihilate a Polish-German army at Legnica. 2 days later, they will do the same to the army of the King of Hungary at a river called the Sajó. Two of the largest armies in Christendom, broken on two different battlefields 500 kilometers apart, within 48 hours of each other. No European commander has ever seen anything like it. Most of them will not live long enough to understand what they saw. Here's the question that should keep you up at night. This was not luck. It was not a horde. It was not chaos. It was a plan. One man's plan. Drawn up months, maybe years in advance, coordinating armies across a front longer than the distance from Lisbon to Moscow, with no telegraph, no radio, nothing faster than a horse. His name doesn't appear on most maps of this invasion. Most of the kings who lost their armies to him never learned it before they died. Subutai. And by the time Europe finally understood who had broken it, he was already gone. Recalled home, his work finished, his name barely a footnote next to men who did far less than he did. This is the story of how a blacksmith's son from a Siberian forest, a man who couldn't even ride a horse until he was 14, became the architect of the single most devastating military campaign Europe had faced since the fall of Rome. And how, for one terrifying spring, the fate of an entire continent rested on whether anyone could outthink him. Nobody could. To understand what happened on the banks of the Sajó River, you have to go back 40 years and a very long way east, past the steppe, past the open grassland everyone associates with the Mongols, into dark, cold forest on the western shore of Lake Baikal. This is not Mongol country. The people who lived here, the Uryankai, weren't horse warriors. They were sometimes called forest Mongols, though the description is misleading. They had almost nothing in common with the steppe riders to their south. They traveled on sledges, not horseback. They were known for metalwork, not warfare. Around 1175, a blacksmith named Julius Caesar had a son. The boy's mother reportedly died giving birth to him. They called him Subutai. Nobody looking at a blacksmith's forest village beside Lake Baikal in the year 1175 would have guessed that this particular baby would one day be responsible for more conquered territory than Alexander the Great, Julius Caesar, and Napoleon combined. But that's exactly what happened. Subutai's family wasn't a total stranger to the rising Temujin, the man who would become Genghis Khan. Subutai's father had reportedly supplied Temujin's starving followers with food during one of the darkest periods of his rise, when the future conqueror was hiding out near Lake Baljuna with almost nothing left. Subutai's older brother, Yelme, joined Temujin's cause around 1187 and became one of his closest companions, at one point saving Temujin's life after he took an arrow in battle. 3 years later, Yelme brought his little brother along. Subutai was 14. And here's the detail that should stop you in your tracks. Unlike every steppe Mongol child, who was put on a horse by age 3 and given a bow by age 5, Subutai had probably never ridden a horse in his life before this moment. The greatest cavalry commander in human history learned to ride as a teenager. Let that sink in for a second. What Subutai lacked in inherited horsemanship, he made up for almost immediately in something far rarer: strategic intuition. Mongol chronicles record that as a young man serving in Genghis Khan's personal guard, he made a vow: "I will ward off your enemies as felt cloth protects one from the wind." It's a humble image. Felt cloth, the material of a nomad's tent, but it was a calculated one. Subutai wasn't promising glory. He was promising protection, reliability, the kind of soldier a leader could build an empire around. That guard position gave him something priceless: access. He could listen in on the Khan's war councils as a teenager, soaking in strategy, while older men assumed he was just furniture by the door. By 1197, at just 22 years old, Subutai got his first independent command, a small detachment sent against the Merkit tribe. He turned down extra elite troops and instead rode into the enemy camp completely alone, posing as a deserter, convincing the Merkits the main Mongol army was far away and they had nothing to fear. They lowered their guard. Subutai brought the army down on them while they slept easy. It's the first recorded instance of what would become his signature for the next 50 years. Never beat an enemy with force, you can beat them with deception. By the early 1200s, Genghis Khan had assembled around him a small group of commanders he trusted above almost anyone else. Most of them not blood relatives, all of them risen purely on ability. Subutai was partnered as a young officer with the empire's most brilliant senior general, Jeb, an apprenticeship that would shape him for the next 2 decades. The Secret History of the Mongols, the oldest surviving work of Mongolian literature, written within years of Genghis Khan's death, preserves a passage about 4 of these men. It is, even by the standards of a conquering empire, an unusually savage piece of writing. They are the 4 dogs of Temujin. They have foreheads of brass. Their jaws are like scissors, their tongues like piercing awls. Their heads are iron, their whipping tails swords. In the day of battle they devour enemy flesh. Behold, they are now unleashed, and they slobber at the mouth with glee. These 4 dogs are Jeb and Kublai, Jelme and Subutai. Jeb, Kublai, a general, not to be confused with the later Kublai Khan. Jelme, Subutai's own brother, and Subutai himself. This wasn't just poetry, it was policy. Genghis Khan ran his empire as something genuinely close to a meritocracy by the standards of the 13th century, and these 4 men, none of them blood relatives, had earned command over princes simply by being better at war than anyone else alive. Subutai's resume over the following 2 decades reads almost absurdly long. He commanded a Tumen, a division of roughly 10,000 men, in the vanguard during the invasion of northern China. In 1212, he took the city of Huan by storm, his first major solo command on record. He helped crush the Naiman Confederation, the last major rival power on the Mongolian steppe, securing Genghis Khan's total control of his homeland. But the campaign that should really make you sit up, the one that's basically a 1220s rough draft of the 1241 invasion of Europe, happened years earlier, in Russia, against a coalition almost nobody talks about. In 1221, Subutai and Jeb were sent on what was meant to be a reconnaissance mission around the Caspian Sea, and ended up covering more than 1,000 miles on horseback, fighting the whole way. They smashed the Kingdom of Georgia, They crossed mountain ranges in deep snow that should have stopped any army. And in 1223, they met a coalition of Rus princes and their Cuman allies at a river called the Kalka. This is where the move that would later annihilate Hungary's army was first field-tested. The feigned retreat. Subutai's forces pretended to break. They ran. The Rus cavalry, confident, aggressive, smelling victory, chased them for 9 straight days. And on the 9th day, the chase ended exactly where Subutai wanted it to end. The defeated Rus princes who were captured were executed by being crushed beneath a victory platform, while Mongol commanders feasted on top of it. Subutai was 48 years old when Hungary's turn came. By then, this wasn't a new trick. It was a tool he'd already used to break an army of 80,000 men. He just hadn't used it on this scale before. So let's talk about why 1241 should never have happened the way it happened. By 1235, the Mongol Empire had a new ruler. Genghis Khan had died, succeeded by his son, Ogedei, and at a massive council that year, Ogedei made a decision that terrified his own commanders, almost as much as it would soon terrify Europe. A full-scale invasion of the West, with Subutai, now around 60 years old, as the operational mastermind. Here's the scale of the problem he was solving. The distance from the Mongol homeland to Hungary is roughly the same as the distance from New York to Los Angeles. No telegraph, no radio. The fastest possible communication was a man on a horse. And Subutai's plan called for multiple armies, separated by hundreds of kilometers, sometimes operating with mountain ranges between them, to hit completely different countries and arrive at their objectives within days of one another. It is, by any modern military standard, an absurd thing to attempt. It's the kind of coordination that modern armies struggle with even with radio. The invasion launched in 1236 against the Volga Bulgars and the Cuman Confederacy on the steppe, softening the road west, eliminating any force that might warn or reinforce Europe. By 1237, Mongol forces under Batu Khan, Genghis Khan's grandson serving as the campaign's nominal royal commander, were tearing through the Russian principalities. Ryazan fell, Moscow fell, Vladimir fell. In 1240, Kiev, the great city of the Rus, was sacked. Europe, watching from a comfortable distance, treated all of this the way people often treat disasters that are happening to somebody else, as somebody else's problem. It would not stay that way. In February 1241, Subutai launched the next phase, and this is where his genius as an operational planner becomes impossible to ignore. He didn't send one army into Europe. He sent the invasion in simultaneously through multiple corridors, designed specifically so that no single European kingdom could call on its neighbors for help, because every neighbor would be fighting for its own life at the exact same moment. One force under the commanders Baidar and Kadan swept north into Poland, drawing away any Polish reinforcements that might otherwise march to help Hungary. A second column tore through Transylvania, and the main army, led by Batu Khan with Subutai directing strategy, annihilated the army of the Hungarian Count Palatine, Denis Toma, at the fortified Vereka Pass on the 12th of March, 1241. That's the gate into Hungary, smashed open less than 3 weeks before the campaign's climactic battle. And almost nobody in Western Europe even knew it had happened yet. King Bela IV of Hungary actually saw this coming, to be fair to him. As early as 1237, a Hungarian friar had personally carried back a letter from Batu Khan demanding Hungary's unconditional surrender or total destruction. Bela never replied. He spent the following years trying, and largely failing, to politically unify a fractured kingdom against a threat most of his own nobles refused to take seriously. Bela even tried to build a kind of early warning shield, supervising the construction of dense defensive barriers along Hungary's eastern mountain passes, intended to slow down exactly this kind of invasion. Subutai's engineers cleared them in 3 days. 3 days. Years of preparation, undone before breakfast. Now here's where the plan reveals exactly how far ahead Subutai was thinking. Because while Batu's main force was finishing off Hungary's eastern defenses, an entirely separate Mongol army was about to fight an entirely separate war, 500 kilometers away, almost to the same calendar day. This northern force, under commanders Baidar and Kadan, had been sent specifically to deal with Poland and any German or Western European reinforcements that might try to come to Hungary's aid. On the 9th of April, 1241, at a town called Legnica, this Mongol force met a coalition army led by Duke Henry the Pious of Silesia. Knights, infantry, some Polish-German allies, a real attempt at organized Western resistance. It barely lasted an afternoon. Duke Henry was killed trying to retreat, and the chroniclers recorded that the victors collected 9 sacks of ears as grim testimony to how many men they'd cut down. 9 sacks. Think about the logistics of that detail alone for a second, and you start to understand what kind of war this was. 2 days later, 2 days, 500 kilometers south, the second blow landed. The Battle of Mohi. 2 of the largest field armies in Christendom, broken on 2 different battlefields in 2 different countries, 48 hours apart, by forces that, as far as either defending kingdom knew, had no way of coordinating with each other at all. That's not a wave crashing onto a beach. That's a tide, scheduled. King Bela IV had finally managed to scrape together a real army, somewhere between 40 and 60,000 men, depending which chronicle you trust, including the knights of his own kingdom, Croatian and Slavonian levies, and a contingent of Cuman horsemen who'd fled west from the Mongols years earlier and taken refuge under Bela's protection. That Cuman alliance, by the way, had already caused chaos before a single Mongol arrow was fired. Hungarian nobles, paranoid that the Cumans were secretly working for the Mongols, murdered their king, Kotani, inside Bela's own camp. The enraged Cumans rode off in fury, looting Hungarian villages on their way out, meaning Bela lost a chunk of his own cavalry to an internal massacre before the actual invasion even reached him. Europe, it turns out, was doing some of Subutai's work for him. On the 10th of April, 1241, Bela's army arrived at the River Sajó and made camp on its western bank, near a town called Mohi. The Mongol forces took up position on the opposite shore. There was one narrow stone bridge connecting the 2 sides, and that bridge became the first flashpoint. That night, Mongol forces attempted to rush the bridge in the dark. They hadn't accounted for the Hungarian crossbowmen waiting on the far side, who tore into the advancing Mongols with devastating effect. The chronicler Thomas of Split recorded that the Hungarians charged onto the bridge, cut down a huge number of the attackers, and drowned the rest trying to force them back across. A real victory. A real bloody nose for the invincible horde. And it was, in the most literal sense, exactly what Subutai wanted them to think. Believing they'd won the engagement outright, the Hungarians pulled their forces back from the bridge and returned to camp to celebrate, leaving only a token guard behind. They had no idea that this entire skirmish was theater, a deliberate, costly diversion designed to pull their attention onto one crossing point, while Subutai quietly built something else, somewhere they weren't watching. South of the main bridge, in deeper water than anyone expected, Subutai's engineers worked through the night constructing a second, makeshift crossing. This is the detail almost nobody outside specialist military history ever hears about Mohi. And it's the detail that decides the entire battle. While the Hungarians were toasting their victory at 2 in the morning, a Mongol force was quietly building a bridge nobody was guarding. Deine Hille, the battle begins! At dawn on the 11th of April, the main Mongol assault hit the bridge again. This time supported by something the Hungarians had genuinely never encountered before. Stone-throwing catapults, deployed as field artillery in the middle of an open battle, hammering the defenders on the bridge until they broke. Mongol forces poured across. And then, exactly on schedule, Subutai's flanking force, having crossed their secret southern bridge undetected, slammed into the Hungarian position from the south and rear. Diversionary attacks at the front, a reconnoitered alternate crossing, a nighttime maneuver nobody saw coming. Multiple directions of attack converging on the same target at the same moment. This wasn't a battle won by braver men or sharper swords. It was won because one side had a coordinated operational plan, and the other side had knights and panic. The Hungarian camp, a defensive ring of wagons, the kind of fortification that had probably felt safe the night before, was now surrounded on every side. And here's the single most chilling tactical decision in the entire battle. Subutai's forces didn't seal the circle completely. They left one gap. One single avenue that looked, to a panicking, encircled army, like an escape route. It wasn't mercy. It was a funnel. When the Hungarian forces broke and ran for that gap, Mongol horse archers were waiting on either side of it, and the retreat became a massacre. Riders cut down from both flanks as they fled in a desperate column toward what they thought was safety. Estimates of Hungarian dead at Mohi run as high as 65,000 men. Bela himself escaped only with the help of his personal bodyguard, fleeing all the way to Croatia. His brother-in-law, Kalman, escaped the field too, but his wounds were so severe he died not long after. In a single morning, the Kingdom of Hungary's entire field army, the product of years of mobilization, Bela's whole strategy for defending his realm, simply ceased to exist. What followed was not a quick war. It was an occupation written in ash. The Mongols pressed on to Pest, burned the city, and massacred its inhabitants, then spent the next 10 months ravaging the Hungarian countryside. Rather than wasting time besieging every fortified town, Mongol forces frequently bypassed strongpoints entirely, instead destroying the agricultural fields and irrigation systems that fed them, engineering starvation as a weapon at the civilian level. By the time it was over, nearly half of Hungary's inhabited settlements had been destroyed, with some estimates suggesting as much as a quarter of the entire population dead. And in the worst-hit regions of the lowland plain, chroniclers recorded that there were almost no survivors left at all. This is the part of the story that rarely makes it into the highlight reel of brilliant tactics and lightning campaigns. The genius of the strategy and the horror of its consequences were not separate things. They were the same thing. So why didn't the Mongols keep going? Why isn't there a Mongol Khanate ruling from Vienna or Paris today, with grasslands stretching unbroken from the Hungarian plain all the way back to Mongolia, exactly as the geography seemed to invite? Because on the 11th of December, 1241, far to the east, Great Khan Ögedei died. Under Mongol succession law, Every prince of Genghis Khan's bloodline was required to return home to participate in selecting the next great Khan, and that included Batu, the campaign's royal commander. Subutai's recall at the exact same moment stripped the army of both its political leadership and its primary strategist in one stroke. Without them, the invasion simply lost its momentum, and Batu wouldn't get another serious opportunity to push toward what the Mongols called the Great Sea, the Atlantic, until 1255, by which point the political moment had passed entirely. Europe wasn't saved by a battlefield victory. It was saved by a death certificate 4,000 miles away that had nothing to do with anything happening on the Sajó River. Sit with that for a second. The fate of Western Europe in the year 1241 didn't hinge on Vienna's walls or France's knights or the Pope's prayers. It hinged on the lifespan of one man Subutai had never even met. Subutai never got to finish what he started in Europe. Reassigned by the new Great Khan Guyuk, he spent his final years campaigning against the southern Song dynasty in China instead. He died in 1248, somewhere around 73 years old. Old age, not a battlefield, finally catching the man no enemy army ever managed to. By any measure historians can construct, his career stands genuinely without rival. More than 20 campaigns directed, more territory conquered or overrun than any single commander in recorded history, more than Alexander, more than Caesar, more than Napoleon. 32 nations brought down, 65 pitched battles fought. And as far as the surviving record shows, not one of those battles lost. So why have you probably never heard his name before today? Partly because he wasn't royal blood, and the chronicles of conquering empires, even meritocratic ones, tend to remember the Khans on the throne rather than the commoners who won their wars for them. Partly because his greatest gift wasn't the kind that makes for dramatic single combat or last stands. It was logistics, coordination, patience, the unglamorous architecture of victory that historians have only really learned to appreciate in the last century, once modern militaries started studying him as a case study in operational warfare. But maybe there's a simpler reason. A man whose signature move was convincing his enemies they'd already won, right up until the moment they realized they'd lost everything, was never going to leave behind a flattering legend. The feigned retreat, the false victory at the bridge, the gap deliberately left open in the encirclement at Mohi. These aren't the stories of a hero. They're the stories of something colder, and in their own way more impressive. A mind that never stopped calculating, even while his enemies thought the fighting was already over. The forest boy who couldn't ride a horse until he was 14 ended his life having broken more kingdoms than any general before or since. Genghis Khan's chroniclers called him one of the 4 dogs, foreheads of brass, jaws like scissors, unleashed and slobbering with glee. But dogs don't draw up battle plans that anticipate their enemy's psychology 3 moves ahead. Dogs don't coordinate armies across a continent with nothing but a horse and a calendar. Subutai wasn't the weapon Genghis Khan unleashed. He was the mind that decided where to point it. History remembers the kings who lost. It's slower to remember the men who beat them, especially when those men were never meant to be more than a footnote in somebody else's empire. If you want more of these stories, the architects of history that the textbooks skip past, subscribe and let's keep digging up the names that deserve to be remembered. I'll see you in the next one.